in over 180 countries. Lehigh Valley Launchbox is a premier business accelerator. From Allentown to Easton, from Bethlehem to right here in Center Valley, when an entrepreneur wants to take an idea to reality, Penn State Lehigh Valley Launchbox is the gold standard of resources and support and innovation. Bright students with a big idea, Lehigh Valley Launchbox. At home, brilliant baker looking for hungry shoppers, Lehigh Valley Launchbox. Great idea, don't know where to start? Lehigh Valley Launchbox. Committed but needing some motivation? That's right now. That's tonight. Launchbox. Our conversation will be spearheaded by our Chancellor, Dr. Tina Richardson, who will tell us more about Beverley's background. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Richardson. She has served as the Chancellor of Penn State Lehigh Valley since 2015, leading efforts in academic growth, student success, and campus expansion, including a $16 million renovation. She has championed diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and built partnerships that strengthen both our campus and the region's entrepreneurial ecosystem. A psychologist by training and a proud University of Maryland alum, Dr. Richardson has also been recognized among the Lehigh Valley's Power 30 in higher education. She has two sons that are Penn State alums, and we are honored to have her leadership and vision guiding Penn State Lehigh Valley. Please welcome Dr. Tina Richardson.
Thank you very much, Pam. So good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Let me hear that again. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All right. So welcome to Penn State Lehigh Valley. It's exciting to be here tonight to champion big ideas, big dreams, and big impacts. Some might think that handwriting is not a typical Launchbox topic, but that's the nature of entrepreneurship, isn't it? Not typical. No topic is ever quite typical when it comes to entrepreneurship. In fact, handwriting and entrepreneurs have quite a bit in common. They're all unique. But how do we see the uniqueness in a world that is changing so fast? As students and as professionals, we are constantly putting our handwriting out into the world, potentially seen instantly across the globe. Thankfully, we have Penn State Lehigh Valley Launchbox to provide the resources needed to navigate this new reality. And we have an expert like Beverley East here today to help guide us through what is that ever-changing digital world. So I'm going to take a few minutes to introduce Beverley through her bio, but this is a phenomenal woman, and I can tell you for sure that the words on this page will not capture what you will experience today. Beverley is an international expert in the field of document examination. She is well known throughout the Caribbean region. She received the Trailblazer Award for being the only woman of color worldwide qualified and practicing in both areas of handwriting identification. She has over 36 years of experience and has testified before 68 judges in 9 countries. She works between 3 offices: Kingston, Jamaica, London, England, and Washington, D.C. She has been a consultant in many media stories, including CBS, 48 Hour, Circleville Anonymous Letters documentary. She was an expert on an Emmy-nominated episode of the Smithsonian Channel 2019, George Washington's Love. She participated in an FBI handwriting identification research study in 2021. She serves as the vice president to the International Association of Document Examiners and is a member of SAFE and NADI, two organizations for document examiners. She's designed a two-year question document training program, which is board certified through one of the international organizations, the International Association of Document Examiners, to be exact. She's trained members of the question document division of the Jamaican Constabulary Force and has hosted other accredited courses throughout the General Legal Council. Now, this phenomenal woman wasn't done. I mean, she has so many more things. She completed the Cardiff University Law School Bond Salon Expert Witness Certificate in Manchester, England. She has published several articles in the Scientific Association of Document Examiners and the International Association of Document Examiners newsletter. She just finished her fourth book. Anybody want to challenge her on how many books you got? So her fourth book, Whose Signature Is It Anyway? Complexities of Caribbean Fraud, was released on Amazon on May 3rd of 2025. She is so well respected, so well regarded, and a phenomenal person to engage in a conversation. And so tonight we're going to have an opportunity to do just that. But before we do, I'm going to call Beverley to the podium, and she is going to tell us a little bit more about her accomplishments and her path. Yes, that'd be too easy. So, change of plans. All right, so we're going to start with some questions. And so in the course of our questions, Beverley will fill in and tell us a great deal about how she came to do what she does. There are so many other professions to choose from, and perhaps some paths that you took early on, and then you landed at the place that it seems to be uniquely you. So, how did you enter into this unique profession of being yes.
It found me. The profession found me. I was in a job that I hated, so I had a career, a very successful career, but I wasn't happy. And I left my corporate world in London, and I came home and I was like, this cannot be my life. I cannot do this for the next 40 years. I have to find a way to have a lifestyle and earn money and not have a career if you don't have a life. So I was at home, just not working. And my mum was worried, and she's like, you don't want us to pay. You walked out of your job. So anyway, I applied for a job. And the application was send your resume with a handwritten cover letter. And it was the handwritten cover letter that was examined that got me the job. So the career actually came to me, the science of handwriting came to me. So when I got the job, 630 something people had applied. I was chosen out of 11th, and I was the only person that had her own office. Everybody was out there, and I was in this office by myself. I loved the job, I loved the team, but I was suspicious. We're like Stepford wives. So I went to my boss and says, what are you putting in the tea? Because this is not normal. We're working hard, we're getting, we're maybe producing the goals, but we all get along. There's always somebody that's driving you crazy, but we were all getting along. So anyways, she said I had you analyzed. I said, analyze in what capacity? She says, handwriting. I was like, oh, so I have the worst handwriting. My mother always says, how can you be a handwriting expert? No one can read what he's like. And so I asked her, I left it alone, and my mom says, just focus on the job, don't get involved in all the other stuff. And then I asked her if I could see my report. And the report wasn't very complimentary. The first two paragraphs. All my stuff that you hide, I shall go through. Are you teaching? Oh, yes, I am. I am doing everything. So all the things that you know you're not good at, you just lie. But in the report, it was all there in front of me on page one, first paragraph. All my negatives things were there. And I was hired. And that's why I was in the room by myself. Because I would be the most productive away from the team. That's what the report said. And I was bringing in the most money, so no one was paying. So that's how I got into it. And then I just kept on asking questions to the person, did the analysis. How did you know I'm stumped? How did you know I'm not? How did you know that I'm not a good person? How did you know all these things? And I just kept calling her up, and she said one day, enough with the questions. Why don't you come and have tea? And I was like, okay. I said, I think I want to do this. I went to have tea. I couldn't find her home. I think I know London very well, but I couldn't find her home. So I took a taxi. And she's not there now, but she lived at the back of Buckingham Palace. I didn't even know that there was houses at the back of the palace. But she lived in this little news cottage with her husband. So I went there, sat with her, that was it. And I did basic training for a year. And then I said, I want to be like, I want to be a consultant. When I wanted to meet her, she was in Paris giving lectures. That was another motivation. That I wanted to be in Paris giving lectures, although my French is crap. Anyway, so I did 2 years studying, got my master's in graphology. So I am a graphologist, although I don't work as a graphologist anymore. Because I then went on to do forensic work, which is this. I married a lawyer who brought me a document that had been forged. And I said, no, that's not what I do. And he said, go back and study some law. You cannot be in the mecca of lawyers and I'm able to help. I was like, okay, I'm going to study. I don't want to be an expert witness in court. So that's great. So I feel like what I do now came to me rather than me wake up one day and say, oh, I want to be a handwriter. I always wanted to be an author. When I was like 10 years old, I spent Nittany Lion Café.
So tell me a little bit more, how you went from, okay, your husband told you to do something, one, and you did it, but two, how did you turn it into a business? Were you working for someone, doing this for quite some time, or was this a pathway? Did you start your own business?
Well, my mentor, Ness, who introduced me to it, I said to her, now, once I got my certificate, I said, now what do I do? She said, you go out in the world, darling. The world is yours. And she was working for Montblanc and Mercedes. She was working for all the big brands. And her husband was in recruitment, so she would get work from him. She said, start where you know. I'm like, where do I know? What do I know? She said, start where you know. She says, where do you think you're most comfortable? And I says, well, she says, go into all these organizations and contact them. just do. And when you can't analyze, speak. So I started getting speaking engagements. I started going to vendors and doing handwriting analysis to vendors, just about something to do that. But I just get yourself, call it guerrilla marketing. I mean, now it's easier. So the technology changes, so it's easier. You just send out an email. It's gone to 500 people. But back in the day, we would be like plodding the streets. And I always tell new entrepreneurs, make yourself a little bit famous. And you become a little bit famous, not by the work that you're doing for your company, but what you can do for your community. So if you go into a charity and you do something for a charity, you do a bake sale, you do this, you do that, and get it in the local press, just make sure your name and your company is a part of that narrative. And so from doing all, little things here and little things there, I used to go to this orphanage, Dr. Bernardo's, and it was my mom's friend who said, tell Beverley to come and help at the orphanage. And I'm like, I don't want to do children's work. Come help. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? Sew on a button, grease that little girl's hair, comb that little girl's hair, do this. Don't make them look like they're orphans. So I started going and wanting to look. I didn't want to adopt anyone. Heaven forbid that I'd be a mother. So I just began just small steps. But I was speaking about what I did for a long time, like your clients, real trouble.
So, tell me a little bit about the progression then to real, what you call real work. How did that unfold? What's that first case that you said, okay, I'm on the path someplace new?
Well, before I left on the secondary, I don't know the name is Penn, but he wanted me to look at, this was the graphology side of my book, so it wasn't fraud. He wanted me to analyze a group of people in, I think I just read him it somewhere. And he says, how did you get your job? I told him. He says, oh, I could use graphology for my team. So that was like one of the biggest companies I was for in London. And then I came to DC and I read this book about this author, that she worked for the Washington Post. And I asked her if she was a prostitute, and then she became an award-winning journalist. So I wanted to see what her handwriting looked like before and after. And I thought that would be a good study, right? And she says, yeah, but I'm just finishing. She didn't want to give me the handwriting because to this day I never got the handwriting. But she did say to me, but do people know about you? So I ended up on the Washington Post front page. That's all you need. That's all you need. And that's how I got my first book with Random House, because somebody saw me on the Post and said, oh, are you thinking of writing a book? I said, well, I'm actually writing a book, but don't go to any agent. I want to be your agent. And that agent got me Random House, 6 figures. So things just kind of fall into place.
So does anyone want to know what that first book was? I think you have to tell us about the first book.
So my first book was Finding Mr. Right, how to find your mate by looking at his handwriting. Save yourself from those years of dating and hours of boring dates, and for men it was too. So as I said, I didn't really become, this is the first book. Well, no one really took me seriously. I couldn't get money from the bank, small business loans. You do what? Thank you, Mrs. So someone said to me, write a book. When you write a book, people pay attention to the subject that you've written about. But I didn't want to do an academic book. So during the time of thinking about what to write, unfortunately, Jean-Benet Ramsey had been murdered, and I was asked to speak on the relevance of the ransom note. So I was doing these speaking engagements for pay for a document that I hadn't seen. I didn't have the document, and I tell them, It's with the FBI Act, the public doesn't have access to. We'll just come and talk about those elements of it. So I would go cross country. Only in America can you travel across country, do 126 speaking engagements and talk about something that you don't have. So, because I didn't have the ransom note and I didn't see the ransom notes. And I kept telling them every conversation, I don't have the ransom note, come anyway and talk about handwriting and blah, blah, blah. So then when I did see the ransom note, I had to go back out again and talk about what was my opinion. And then my husband is a lawyer, so he was like, don't do those tours because someone's going to come and sue you. Somebody from that family is going to come and sue you. Get off the road. But in the process of talking about Jean, women would come up to me and say, I met this man in Barbados. What can you tell me? I'm like, here am I talking about a murdered girl and they're talking to me. Some man they're never going to see again. I don't understand. And my husband said, you may want to pay attention to those questions. Don't be so dismissive. So I started writing down the questions. And that's how Finding Mr. Right came about. So I broke it up into sections, not chapters. I thought it has to be a book that you just flip to what you want to know. Do you want to know if he's deceitful? Everybody wants to know that. Why you got to read the whole book? Just go to the chapter. If you want good sex, why you got to read the whole book? Just go to that chapter. Just go to that part of the book. So that's what I did. And it was, I was on Good Morning America with Diane Sawyer. And we just about, I think the Harry Potter series had just come out. And we were number 2 under Harry Potter. So you couldn't beat Harry Potter, you just couldn't.
So you've given us a glimpse of what some of the chapters in that book. But you want to mention what some of the other ones are? No, so we could just go right to that section.
So the last it's in 12 sessions. It's in 12. Even when I was writing it, the Random House guy says, I think it should be in chapters, and we go back and forth the longest time. So things you might want to know: ego, communication, motivation, mental process, how does they process information, sex drive, sociability, looking at the big picture, can you trust him? Integrity is actually number 2. And then if you don't read the book, I did a dictionary. Just for those who don't want to be bothered to read. So in fact, there's a dictionary.
And do you have any copies of that book available today?
Yes, I.
Oh,
yes, I do. Yes, I do have some. As a good entrepreneur, you always walk. And I can tell by other authors, even when they tell you don't bring.
So going back to the John Benet Ramsey case, there was what you described as a lot of pressure. Pressure before you saw the document, pressure after you saw the document that required some smart decision making, I'll just say. But how do you handle high stakes pressure in the work that you do? Because everyone was more or less looking at you when you're talking about the John Benet Ramsey case and perhaps many of the other cases that you've had. So, how do you remain objective in a way that protects the integrity of your work? Because that's stress.
It's absolute stress. The Jean Benet Ramsey case wasn't so much stress because I wasn't the expert on the case. I was just speaking to the media about my own opinion. I wasn't the one that testified. And different experts were working on that case. So, but in order to maintain my own integrity, what I found is, I think I was working as an expert witness for a long time before I realized how dangerous my job was. I went to testify once and there were snipers on the roof, and the lawyer told me to go and sit in the library, don't talk to anybody. And I wrote a letter to my secretary to give it to my son, just in case it didn't come out. And I thought, this is not what I had in mind as a lifestyle choice of work. So then I started to rethink on the cases that I take. So in the high pressure jobs, I center myself. I don't listen to the media. I don't read what else is going on around me. I just stay centered, you know. And I was saying at lunch how I hate to get into a taxi and the driver wants to talk to me like I'm going to see him again. You know, it's like, shh, it's my time to center myself. Don't talk to me.
So are you saying that you avoid engaging beyond where necessary, like in your downtime? You'd rather that be silent time more than having people ask you, I mean, like, you don't want to be more visible than necessary?
It depends where I am. If I'm in America, no one knows who I am really. If I'm in Jamaica, everybody knows who I am really. So I don't go out 2 days before a trial. I leave the island as soon as the trial is over. All the people in my building where I live, I have no communication with them. They know who I am, but don't talk to me, don't knock on my door for sugar, don't. Because I don't know who they know. I don't know who they're gonna send to my door. So I just say, hello, good morning, good evening. And that's all they know about me.
Okay.
But in America, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah. But that's a very interesting reality, and I think people who work in law enforcement in general might share that. I mean, as a psychologist, when I was practicing full time, yeah, I wasn't, yeah, no, the questions outside of, yeah.
Somebody in my building in Jamaica said he could take me out to dinner because his girlfriend didn't believe in what I did. And I said, I'm going out to dinner, how will that change anything? Well, she doesn't believe, I don't need to sell, but is she gonna be a client? Why am I doing this? But here in America, I mean, I have my neighbors above me, we exchange recipes and I have a better relationship. You know, when I'm not in my apartment, I give them the code and let them see the plumber in or whatever. I have a totally different relationship with my people in London. But in Jamaica, because it's such a small community, and my neighbors know when I got a case because I got the detail in the past of like 24/7. So they were like,
So that raises a lot of questions and curiosities for me. But do you have, or do you encounter people who want to join this profession? No, not her true. I was going to take this in a different direction. Do you encounter people who hear about what you do, learn about this profession, and want to pursue this kind of career?
yes, everybody wants to pursue it. They think it's CSI, you know, or they think it's but then when you give them the outline of what they have to study, then you don't hear from them again. Yeah, well, and there's two things I do. When I take on students, apart from, I tell them, I can take your money and I can train you, but I need to see who you are first. And so I analyze them. I do the graphology side first. And if I see deceit, I don't want you as my student. If I see lack of integrity, I don't want you as my student. Because you're going to carry that into the profession. Because everything that we learn, we can reverse it to recreate a fraud. We know how to break it apart. So, you know, I went on holiday with my family once and we were in this wonderful hotel and my cousin, God bless her, she was like, oh, we could live like this all the time if Auntie Beverley just wasn't so good person. I'm like, can you stop talking? Can you just stop talking? And she was like, but Auntie Beverley, I would come and visit you in prison. I said, oh, that's nice. We're not doing that. We're not doing that at all.
Tell me more about what kinds of things you have to teach someone who, would want to pursue this profession. You shared, who you would not train
Yeah.
and why, but what do you have to, yeah.
So part of my course is there's a foundation, what are the principles of document examination to look at fraud. You have to understand the various pen systems that are in place so that you understand the writer. You have to understand the fonts and the document, if the document's been, if sometimes it's not the signature, but the document has been tampered. So you have to understand that aspect of it. There is all these areas of disguised handwriting. When somebody know that they're going to maybe get caught, so they disguise their handwriting. And that comes up a lot in prenups, where I see signatures, signatures on prenups, and then someone says, that's not how I sign. I sign like this. So it's just looking at all the various areas. I'll think of them off the top of my head, but there is a lot of reading and a lot of information that we should. People just think that all we do is look at letters. This letter looks like that letter. Oh yeah, got it. Yeah, this letter and this letter. And there's so much more. There is the rhythm of the writing. There is the pen lifts that you look at. There is the proportion. We all have habitual writing patterns in our own handwriting. So it's not so much that this letter looks like that letter. But you are going to, if I gave everybody a piece of paper and say, sign your name, you would sign your name in the same piece of paper. If I gave it back to you another piece of paper, you'll sign your name in that same position. So somebody else comes and signs their name, your name, trying to be you, they're not going to sign it. And this is where AI comes in. So if we're looking at signatures that are created by some kind of machine, if we know it's not you, because there's no rhythm, it's a still signature. And then the positioning is not going to be where you will position. That's the simple part. And then under the digital microscope, wherever that signature has come from and placed somewhere else, that background is going to be different than the rest of pixels of it. So that's speaking of it. I can't tell you the other four, but there's just all these things that that we're looking at all the time, see if something is authentic or not. People sit there and they lie in your face and say that they didn't sign it or whatever. I don't want to hear the story. Just give me the document. Will tell me what I need to know.
So what advice would you give to organizations such as banks or insurance companies, or law enforcement, on preventing document-based fraud?
I think it's continued training. They say knowledge is power. So it's continued training, especially like your fund, you call it, like bank tellers and people, your front end staff. Usually the managers want to do the training, and the money's already gone. But by the time it gets to the manager, the money's gone. And I tell the managers all the time, train your frontline people. They don't want to spend the money. But that is, to me, the best way. The training, always to keep your staff up to date with. And there's basic things that you go into banks and train them and show them. What I'm doing in a 2-year course, I can give you enough in one day to at least know a red flag. You may not have all the answers, but it's like, oh, positioning is wrong, this is wrong, pen lifts are wrong. Take it.
So let's say something advances to court. So what role does handwriting evidence typically play in court today? And with all the technology that's available today, are we challenged or advantaged?
I think I'm advantaged because when I started training, my teacher was 87 years old, didn't have a laptop, didn't have a microscope, and he was still using a little glass thingy. And so I learned from the basic foundation of how to do. He was using wax tape to measure pennies. Yeah, well, he called them air strokes. So he put the wax paper and see where the pen lifted and then measure it like that. So I don't do that anymore, but it's a good foundation to know that you have to look at it. Because some of the new books don't teach you that. So I found that just working over a period of time and changing the technology all the time. I've just done 2 days in Kansas with these young people who were teaching us how to look at the internet and the dark web and all this stuff. And I mean, part of it was like, this is a whole other language to me. But I said 2 days learning things that I think when you think you're an expert, you know. So if we go to court as an expert, by the time we get to court, it's really the other side knows, excuse my language, shit as a let's just try to discredit them. That's the main thing. It's a game now. It's not, you know, it's not about document anymore. It's about we got to discredit this, especially if they don't get another expert, or they can get an expert they're gonna pay that expert just to say something different. Most of we all know each other because we're a very small professional union. We're less than 2,000 people in the world, less than 2,000. So most of us know each other. So if they see my name on a piece of paper, they're like, oh, no. So, but it's usually sometimes the government experts who, not that they will take the money, but they will spin the report a different way. Because all you have to do is create doubt. Shift from whatever I'm saying and create a little bit of doubt so the judge might be confused or whatever. And that's what we do.
So I imagine that they have faced a lot of people who give the counter argument to whatever your analysis is. And so how have you dealt with that? Has any of that been gender related? I mean, they really just want to win the case, but
Yeah.
But how do they? So what would challenging your expertise look like? What are some of the examples?
Well, I give you a good example. Earlier this year in June, I was in court in New York. The courtroom was next to the village center, as if I didn't have enough stress on its own.
Yeah.
And I had to like get through all the journalists and everything to say I wasn't a part of that. So I was actually going for another case in the other building. So that case particularly, it was one document, the signature I was saying was not authentic. The Secret Service expert was saying it was authentic. They were using the argument that they had more documents to examine. I only had 4 documents. They had 26 documents. And that it was a variation of this man's signature. So it's really the battle of the two of us. And he sat there quite smug the whole time I was under cross-examination. And cross-examination is awful because they get to talk to you anyhow they want. And if the judge just sits back and doesn't say anything, but you can't raise your voice, you can't give them the finger, you can't do any of that. You just have to be very polite and very, So I sat there 2 days of, I call it fighting with your hands tied. And I came prepared. I had an overhead projector. I showed because the only person I had to convince is the judge. So I showed the judge all the reasons why I'm saying it's authentic. What happened on the other side when he got in the witness stand, he didn't have a projector. He didn't have all the, because he was Secret Service and he knew he didn't have to do all that. So the judge says, well, where can I see what you're saying? And she was like, page 183. So she's doing all of this every time. So anyway, long and short is his presentation, his delivery didn't help. And I was on my way somewhere and I'm in the airport and I get this message from the lawyers, we won. And I'm trying not to do a dance in the airport. $250 million lawsuit. One signature. One signature. So people, I mean, the witnesses went in there and lied, went into the stand and lied. They said they saw it being signed. So it's just a matter of keeping your composure, not allowing to be bullied. And I've been doing it long enough now to not be bullied at all.
So I shouldn't pick a fight with you today. I would not win. So you know, we're yeah, I know better. So as we kick off Global Entrepreneurship Week, you've had a very successful career. It had its challenges, and it certainly has had a number of successes. But what lessons from your international career would you offer professionals who want to build globally relevant skills? I mean, so far, most of what you talked about is analyzing English writing. But from a global perspective, what advice would you give, and what how does the skill set that you have transcend?
So first of all, before you go out there in the big world, you have to have a strong foundation of what whatever your company is. It's got to be very strong at the base so that when you go out into the world, because you're going to get other challenges, the cultures are going to be different, sometimes the language. I have actually analyzed other languages, Arabic, German, Spanish. What do they speak in Holland? Dutch. Yeah, so but you start with what you know, with the English, and then just about a week ago, the BBC called me, wanted me to look at some Arabic work. So any kind of media is good. So even if it's something I haven't done, I will find a handwriting expert that can help me. You know, and I have my base, my resources of handwriting experts in Malaysia, in India. Just either we share the work or they guide me onward. And I don't speak Arabic, but there are ways that I was able to solve the case by looking at examining the documents.
So I appreciate knowing that the skill that you have and the knowledge base that you have allows you to work in the international context, different languages, different countries. Certainly, I introduce you identifying your global international context. So what I want to do is turn this over actually to the audience, because I've seen people in the back, kind of waiting. So this will be an opportunity for the audience to ask, raise your hand and ask questions that you might have. Yeah, you can stand up for answering the questions, because I don't need to. Yes. Oh.
Are there any questions? No questions?
Beverly?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I'm just curious, Dr. Richardson kind of went into this, but I'm curious, you talked about your work with an expert witness.
Yes.
And going against another expert witness.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, how does that process work for you as far as you review their testimony and kind of apply that to your arsenal for the future? Do you learn things from other handwriting experts in this process?
If I'm going into court with another expert, I do ask to review their report after I've done my report. I want to have a clean canvas of what I'm examining. I'm not interested in what they've done. And even what they've done, without sounding conceited, it's not going to be at the standard that I'm working at. So whatever I'm seeing, I need to be able to tell my legal team the weaknesses here, here, and here. Ask this expert to explain how they arrived at this, this, and this. Because a lot of experts are good at generalizing rather than being specific. And I tell my students, when I'm training you, you can't be a little bit pregnant because there's no such thing. You're either pregnant or you're not. So if you make a commitment to an opinion, you've got to stand by that opinion. And you only begin to waver when you know your opinion has been made for you by the other side. So if there's no expert on the other side, it's much easier because they know it's a waste of time paying another expert when they're just going to go through the pages. But I have a process where they say to me, do you want to see the expert's report? No, I don't want to see it, but I've done that. And then I look at that, like, seriously? This is what you've done? You know, I think when I'm doing my reports, they should be self-explanatory, like the graphics. I put graphics in, as I say, images as a picture is 1,000 words. So a lot of experts put a lot of technical words in that people don't understand. They're trying to make it look so sophisticated using all this language that no one understands. At the end of the day, if the judge is looking at something, they can see, oh yeah, I can see where I put two side by side. Very simple. Just put the two signatures side by side and say, these are the discrepancies and why they're discrepancies. And I build a picture of, these are all the known signatures. These are the habitual writing patterns I see in the known signatures. When you put the question signature beside it, you don't find these habitual writing patterns. That's something. So a lot of experts says it's similar. When they're saying the signature is authentic, well, I found all these similarities. Of course you are. That's the forger's job, to make it look similar, duh, you know. But where are the things that are not consistent? You know, like full stops. I mean, over the weekend, a lady sent me a document, and I wasn't sure when I sent her the answer because it was a good disguised signature. And I said to her, the signature is authentic. I hope this is the answer you want because I don't want to be led into anything. And then today she sent me back. She says, my ex-husband is saying he didn't sign this, but I was present when he signed it. But there was some differences in that signature. And that's why I'm saying it's disguised. But there's little things like if you always do a full stop after your middle name, the forger is not concentrating on that full stop. They're concentrating on getting the letter formation. So that's an habitual behavior, putting the full stop after your middle name. She sent me 20 signatures of her ex-husband. There's a full stop on this document. It's now saying, I mean, there's other things. But, you know, there's just these smaller details that the forger is not focusing. And also the positioning, the signature goes up off the signature line. That's another habitual writing pattern. The forger needs the line to go for her. And there are a lot of women out there. My next book is called Where There's a Will, There's Another Woman.
We're gonna have to have you back.
I've worked on some wills and it's always the woman. It's the woman forging the wills. Any other question? Yes, yes, sir. Thank you for coming, by the way.
It appears that you only need to understand the script of the language and not the language itself to analyze the document or to authentic signature. Is that correct?
I don't have to understand any of the language or even the script, because to us, it is a pattern. Every signature has a pattern in it. So we're looking at the rhythm and the pattern. It doesn't matter if I can't read the name. A lot of people say, oh, my signature, my handwriting is illegible. It doesn't matter. I'm looking at positioning and I'm looking at size. I'm looking at proportions. I'm measuring different things other than, what's that name again? What's this person's name again? It's irrelevant.
But some scripts are very different than other scripts, like you train or most of your work is in English language, and that you said you also analyze Arabic script, which is very.
It's very different. It's very different. But if somebody has signed something that, say, I don't know the name, say, I'm just going to say Arim Salam, just say that out there. It doesn't matter if I can read that name, but however the symbols are supposed to be in Arabic for that name, they should be similar. No? Exactly. Exactly.
You think it does that?
But if I don't find the same pattern, I mean, I'm not doing it by myself. I'm going to reach out to somebody who does understand Arabic, and then it's a joint report. But I always like to start out, what do I know? And the weakness that I don't know, check it with somebody else. But I don't want them to just tell me, because then I don't learn. I have to do it myself and tell them how I've done it. And then they say, considering you don't speak Arabic, this is a good interpretation. You know, that's how I learn. Yes, sir. Thank you for coming.
Find it very fascinating. To Dr. Richardson's question about being mobile, working mobile, how do you manage, or how do you get through different cultures of the world and to do analysis? Because each country we go to has different cultures and different understandings of how we work and how we work together. But how do you deal with that as your?
Well, when I take on an assignment, I ask the lawyer that I'm working with, there's specific rules for the court in every single country. I need to see those rules in writing, not what you're going to tell me verbally. I need to see in writing so I can check them off, because we can go in court and they say, oh, you didn't apply rule 32711. Dismissed. So I'm very methodical about how each case that I take on, like even working between the Caribbean islands. In Trinidad, they do this. In Jamaica, we do this. In England, it's a whole nother set of rules. In the US, it's Rule 702. So each country has its own rules, but you make sure you have those rules before I begin. And then if I travel to that country, then what am I supposed to be wearing? Who's the interpreter? You know, all that. I'm doing less traveling since COVID. You know, but it's always it's good though. I think it's good. And I always want to be respectful. I was just before COVID, I was going to go to Germany to testify, and then COVID came, and I had an interpreter lined up, and I was going to spend 2 more extra days because I had a girlfriend in Germany, and I had everything planned out. Then COVID came and didn't go anywhere. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
If you have an opinion on, like when I went to elementary school, we learned cursive writing, which turned into our signature, and I don't know when they stopped teaching cursive writing.
Yeah, I know.
And
I know cursive.
I don't know if like Jamaica cursive, or how does that relate, like the young people today?
Well, they print, don't they?
Yes,
Young people.
and-
They don't know cursive.
Yes.
So even that by itself, I can tell you the age of somebody looking at their handwriting, their rough age. I could tell you which geographical system they would have learned. One of our experts did a book on the alphabet of the international alphabet of various pen systems across the world. So I can look at a handwriting and know roughly the age of that person. So when young Pepper starts, they try to forge their grandmother's handwriting. It's wrong because the system is so different from what they are taught. They use the wrong letter formations and it's usually printed. Yeah, so don't try to interfere with your grandparents' handwriting ever or documents that belong. And then pens, that's the other thing. You cannot have a gel ink pen on a document that was dated 1945. You just cannot. Note to self. You cannot.
To electronic signatures that are so prevalent. They don't look like my handwriting at all.
Yeah, electronic signatures, I call them the stepchildren of the world. The electronic signatures, they really are easier to identify if they're placed on the wrong document, if they're placed on a document that was not put there by that person. There is, as I said, the pixels behind that document. Every signature or anything that's removed has a background. So the pixels on that background is not going to match the pixels of where it came from, on where you're putting it. So as soon as somebody brings something to me and they say it's questionable, I'm going to find why it's questionable. It's not just the signature. There'll be other things. There'll be fonts. There will be, and there's this gentleman who's called the font detective, Thomas Finney. Look him up. Anything about fonts. I mean, I've done several classes with him, but you could spend a week with him and still not know anything about fonts. There is so much about fonts that's out there. So, but I know enough now that if I'm looking at a document or that font, so sometimes the signature is not in question. So you have a contract, 5 pages, 10 pages. Page 6 has been changed. The signature on the back is perfect, is right, because they haven't tried to forge the signature. They've just taken the middle of the contract and recreated it. But then when you start to align it and look at the fonts carefully, you can see that that page doesn't align with the other pages. So it's just, yeah, it's endless. It's endless. I worked on a money laundering case once and there were blue checks and yellow checks, and then I got gray checks. And I called the company and I says, how have I got gray checks? And they said, oh no, there's no black checks. I says, how come I got gray checks? No, it was black checks. Sorry, black checks. So I said, no, Mrs., it's just blue checks and yellow checks. I says, yeah, but I got 126 black checks. And no one could give me an answer. Then when I was on the witness stand, the opposing lawyer said, but Mrs., I don't think you examined the grey checks. And I was like, oh, the grey checks are the black checks that I examined, but they didn't print them in colour. They just photocopied them. And it was all unraveling in it. And he was like trying to shut me up. Okay, Mrs., okay, no need to go any further there. No. Oh, now I know why they're black and not yellow or pink or blue. So yeah, it's just things that come out in court that, and then they tried to burn the courthouse down. Those are I think the more interesting stories are not the documents, but the stories around the documents. Yeah.
Time for one more question. There was a question on.
Yeah, you mentioned age and you mentioned where people are from and you mentioned prenups. with age, I've gotten a hand tremor. Is my signature still going to be to match in some way a signature that I used on a document before I got married, let's say?
What? How am I gonna say? So if you have tremor, that's gonna show in the stroke of the writing. However, you may still, if you've got, when you go home, look at something that you signed before you got the tremor.
Yeah.
See if the pen lifts are in the same place. That's usually what you will find as a habitual writing pattern of your own handwriting. And I suggest everybody here, when you sign your name, understand the characteristics in your own signature. Take out your phone and enlarge your signature and know it like your ATM number. So if it shows up somewhere, I'm like, no, I do 4 pen lifts and a full stop at the end of mine. I do an underline. I do know it, so that when somebody else tries to recreate it, you'll know that it's not yours. You know, because the forger's job is to create it as he sees it or she. So, but they're going to miss something. Do you do an I dot or do you do a dash? Do you do your I dot over your stem or to the left of your stem? The forger is just going to put an I dot. So there's all these little things that you need to understand about your own signature. Yeah. I've seen my own signature show up on documents that I've not worked on. I had to go to Paris to testify on a document that I didn't do, but somebody lifted my signature and put it on a document. Yes.
Write this way, don't write this way.
Okay, so here's
So then my letter will appear, so then it's, can somebody work it? I'll just write.
So here's the clue with left-handedness. You turn the paper differently. I don't even know if different, you turn the paper, let me just say that to be politically correct. However, when your pen hits the paper, you're going against the grain of the paper. Under magnification, you can see that you're left-handed, that you're going against the grain of the paper. Whereas a right-handed person just signs the name and they're going with the grain of the paper. Just little things, just little details. And you go to court and you see the person is right-handed and it's a left-handed signature. You know, so it's just all these things that people don't think about when they are doing. Is there time for me to read a little something?
Yes, yes, please.
Thank you.
Here's some additional, really beautiful. I don't know if you want to mention any of your country. Oh, no. So you can share some of the, some information about, the other books that you have.
I was going to read you something from Bar Mitzvah, which has nothing to do with handwriting. It was just my little life growing up in London.
Okay.
So when I was growing up, I didn't know I was going to be a handwriting expert, but I always knew I was going to be a writer. I just needed a model. So the first book you saw, the red book, Finding Mr. Right. This is the new book. This is forensic book on handwriting, 40 cases that I have worked on in the Caribbean, how I've won these cases using different techniques, including solving a case where an X was used as a signature, and I was able to show that the X wasn't authentic. So I ended up having an office in Jamaica because I went to Jamaica to research this story. My father's family died in a train crash in 1957. 250 people died, and I wanted to bring the story alive because nothing was ever written about them in the paper. Beyond the night of the accident, nothing was ever written. So I wanted to recreate that. So I went to Jamaica and I decided to take a year off. As I said, when I started my company, I wanted a lifestyle. So I wanted to work on this book. Pulled my son out of school, took him to Jamaica, put him in a Jamaican school. He hated it. And I interviewed survivors and created this story. While I was on TV, the host said to me, "So what's your day job then? What do you do when you're not looking for dead people?" I says, "I'm a handwriting expert, so please give out my number because I want survivors to come forward." Not one survivor called, but everybody else called needed a handwriting expert. So 20 years ago, I didn't have the intention to have a company in Jamaica, but I do now have a company in Jamaica. So this book is the story of the family, not my family, a fictitious family, and the journey of that night and what happened. And this year, the government unveiled a monument for the people who died in 1957. And I was saying to Cindy earlier, I had to turn down the movie deal last year because it didn't represent the story that I had written, which I could well do with that money now. We had a hurricane. This book I wrote was my little girl life in London, between London and Jamaica. I had Jamaican family, but I lived between two families. 4 women who didn't have any children, but loved me like I was. So this is what I was going to read from you today, but I've got glasses. And they're on sale. They're on sale here outside. Any other questions? Yeah, they're there. They are. Cindy put them all out there, so I know they're out there. Any other questions? One thing I can say to anybody that's an entrepreneur or working in, it's a hard journey, but be committed and don't listen to the naysayers. If I was to listen to the amount of people who said, "You're doing what? Handwriting? Oh, computers are going to come, but AI is coming." I'm 36 years in and we have more. We're hiring 3 people next year. So whatever you're doing, it cannot be as hard as selling handwriting. Just keep going. Just be committed. You will make mistakes. People will tell you no, but just be committed to what it is that you're trying to achieve, and you will. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Our books are on sale out in the hallway. We also have silent auction out in the hallway. And Shantae is here with her travel things. There she is. Beverly, this has been such an insightful conversation. Thank you. From uncovering the truth through handwriting to understanding how your work has shaped global investigation. As we wrap up, I want to take a moment to recognize some of the Penn State Lehigh Valley criminal justice students who are here with us this evening. Yeah. Led by our dedicated faculty, including our program coordinator, Deb Dreisbach. Woo! Just so you know, parents in the room, students can complete a 4-year degree in criminal justice right here at Penn State Lehigh Valley.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Cindy Evans. I'm the program director for Lehigh Valley Launchbox, and I want to share a glimpse of what's ahead. In spring 2026, we'll be opening our brand new downtown Allentown location, right in the heart of the city's innovation corridor. This new space will give entrepreneurs, students, and community partners a place to collaborate, to create, and connect. Whether you're prototyping a product, testing a business idea, or building partnerships that'll provide regional growth. What makes Launchbox special and so aligned with Penn State Lehigh Valley's mission is that we don't just talk about entrepreneurship, we help people practice it. We provide the resources, the mentors, and encouragement to turn great ideas into sustainable businesses that strengthen our local community. At Lehigh Valley Launchbox, our mission is to champion emerging founders, amplify diverse voices across our region's entrepreneurial landscape. Events like tonight are fueled by an incredible support of our partners and sponsors. A heartfelt thank you today for our sponsors, the Penn State Bookstore, Victaulic, Strokes and Slants, Dr. Tim Silvestri, Handled by Heather, Beauty Blender, Internet, and Project Move. If today's program resonated with you and you'd like to help us bring more sponsors, speakers, and workshops to provide programming for the region, we welcome you to consider having a conversation with us about sponsorship. Your support directly helps launch accessible education, mentorship, and education for our next generation of innovators. Please feel free to speak with me after the event or reach out anytime. I'm just down the hall in room 161. Together, we can keep building an inclusive and vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem here in the Lehigh Valley. Thank you again for joining us, Beverly, and for sharing your brilliance with us today. We're always looking for new ways to work with local businesses, community organizations, and alumni who would like to believe in innovation. Now, before we close, again, there is a silent auction. Your generosity helps fund student innovation grants, expand mentorship opportunities, and keep all of our entrepreneurial educational resources for the community. So thank you for making that possible. Please go back to the registration table and sign on those dotted lines for that silent auction. Please take a moment to scan the QR code to provide feedback. Thank you, Tiffany. And finally, on behalf of Penn State Lehigh Valley and Lehigh Valley Launchbox, thank you for being part of the Global Entrepreneurship Week.